Black Myth Wukong, a game that is praised for no reason. The hype for this game is real. People claim it to be the game of the year of 2024. But what is the reason for such unconditional love to this game? The marketing campaign. The marketing team worked really hard to promote this game, and I'm here to tell you to cool down. This game is shady as hell, and for some reason, nobody wants to talk about it, and when some people do, they get shot immediately by the horde of fans. Now, let's talk about what is wrong about Black Myth Wukong, and why it is a shady game. First, there is no reason to trust Game Science Studio, the studio that develops Black Myth. They literally have made only one game ever. Black Myth Wukong is their second game. The first one is a mobile game that looks like this. They have never had experience making a third-person Souls-like game. Yes, I'm going to say a Souls-like game, because if it sounds like a duck, looks like a duck and tastes like a duck, it's probably a duck. Yes, I know that it is closer to an action slasher Souls game, but we'll talk about it later. Now, a lot of studios want to make a good Souls-like game, but it won't be a stretch to say that not a lot of those studios succeeded. Probably the best Souls-like game is Lies of P, which brings us to the argument that, look, it is possible to make a really good Souls-like game for no-name studio. So Game Science can do it with Black Myth Wukong too. Yes, it is possible. In theory. First, Round 8 Studio, the developers of Lies of P, have developed an actual PC third-person game with actual melee combat system, where Game Science developed a strategy mobile game. Now, Lies of P had a publisher, NeoWiz Games, that published over 45 games. So NeoWiz probably provided money and guidance to Round 8 Studio. Black Myth is an indie game. Game Science are the developers and they are the publishers, which brings us to the issue of money. But we will talk about it in a second. Let us first close the argument about Lies of P. All things aside, yes, it is possible to make a really good Souls-like game as your second ever game. But let's be real, there were nowhere near the amount of hype around Lies of P that we see around Black Myth Wukong. So let's face the reality, Black Myth hype is based on a good marketing campaign. And some may say, no, there are a lot of gameplay footages, so our faith is based on that. Lies of P also had a lot of gameplay footages, and they even had a demo. And they still didn't have the hype that Black Myth has. So the fact is that the hype around Black Myth Wukong exists purely because of marketing. Period. You are just a hater! Not at all. I want the game to be good. I want all games to be good. That would be a perfect world. But I see that Black Myth is a shady game, so I speak up. Now, before we move on, why won't you leave a like? That gives motivation. Now let's talk about the money. For example, Elden Ring is developed by From Software Studio, and Bandai Namco is the publisher. Which means that Bandai Namco gives money to From Software to develop games. And the publisher is also managing marketing and other stuff. In return, the publisher gets majority of the money from the game. Black Myth is an indie game. The Game Science Studio is the developers and they are the publishers. So where do they get the money to make Black Myth? What is the budget of the game? It is not a secret that game development is quite expensive. And people claim that Black Myth is gonna be the game of the year of 2024. So let's look at the budget of 2023 Game of the Year. Also an indie game. Baldur's Gate 3 development cost is 100 millions. That's cheap, by the way. That's the least what you would expect from a game with the ambitions of Black Myth. Remind you that Larian developed a lot of games prior to Baldur's Gate 3. I'm sorry, but that game didn't bring 100 millions to the Game Science, so they could invest all of those monies into Black Myth development. So Black Myth is probably under budget for those ambitions. Though there is one place where they could get the money for the game. If you know, you know. Otherwise, it doesn't look good for the Game Science. Now let's talk about the gameplay footages. First, the game looks beautiful, I'm not gonna deny it. But the game is developed on Unreal Engine 5. More and more games will look like this. That kinda becomes like a new standard. All games that will be developed on Unreal Engine 5 will look like this. So that's not a great achievement. Now before we move on, subscribe to the channel, I have a lot of interesting videos for you to check out. Thank you. Now about the gameplay itself. 99% of gameplay that we saw are boss fights. And that's a problem. It seems that Black Myth is a boss rush type of game. The issue with those kinds of games is that you don't have the time to learn your own movesets. That's what happened to Bayonetta. Bosses are horrible opponents to learn the game and how to play it. That's why games like Devil May Cry feature a lot of simple mobs for you to practice your moves. Now, it also doesn't help that Black Myth is only 15 to 20 hours long. Lies of P, by the way, was 30 to 36 hours long. So not only we won't have simple mobs to practice our moves, we also won't have enough time to learn the game in general. And if you expected a game like Elden Ring, where there's a lot of things in the game, forget it. With the amount of game footages that we've got, we may say that we have already seen like 10 to 20% of the game. There's no big world to explore, the game is small. And I think for an action Souls-like slasher game, it is important. It is not a shooter that you can just pick a gun, point at the enemy and shoot. You have to learn the movesets of your enemies, and what is more important, your own. I'm sure that majority of you did not know that Black Myth is only 15 to 20 hours long. That's what you expect, and that's what you get. Now, I also can say that I don't like the pace of the game, some animations and the impact of your attacks, but to be sure of that, we need to actually play the game. Now, what I wanna add is that even though the game looks good, but it gives me mental fatigue. Majority of the footages that we've got shows us only outside locations. Rocks, trees, dirt, etc. There's no diversity in the visuals. Now, let's summarize it all. A beautiful but a short 15 to 20 hours boss rush game, with homogeneous locations and with no time to actually learn the game. From an inexperienced studio with ambitions, has an extremely good advertisement. So, will it be a good game? I expect a 6 out of 10 game or 7 out of 10 game. Best case scenario, 8 out of 10. That's the ceiling. I would be impressed if the game would be 8 out of 10. Again, I want to be wrong. I want all games to be good. But for me, the game looks absolutely overhyped. I mean, we will see, the release is coming very soon. But for now, subscribe to the channel, leave a like and check out my other videos. Like for example, a video about From Software game formula. See you later.